Speaker is going to be Dave Beck. Dave is kindly a return speaker because he was actually at our other session talking about basic income. But Dave is friend, academic, part of UBI Lab Food, and works at the University of Salford.
Just say hello to our audience, and I don't know the rest of the names, but Ash, I believe that's my Ash. I've got an Ash here, Ashley, because she's joined me. She's one of my students. So I share all my events that I do with all my students, so it's great to have some of the students here as well. So as Simon said, I'm going to be talking about my work that I do for the University of Salford. So I'm a lecturer in social policy. And I'm very, very interested in understanding the development of social policy and how it can aid people, because that in effect is what social policy should be about. Are we ready to go? Are we ready to go?
Yes, go for it.
Yeah, cool. So thanks for the invite. I initially turned this down because Alicia gave me a brief that I thought was a little bit out of my area. And I sold the idea to a friend of mine who I don't think was able to do it. But I've got something that I do want to say about one of my combining my interests of basic income and food insecurity. So I'm interested in the decline of the high street as a really, really bad position for our society. And it's something that I've been talking about with my universal basic income groups that I'm involved in. So as Simon said, I'm the co-chair of 2 universal basic income lab groups. I'm the co-chair of the UBI Lab Food from my academic interest. So we look at how food could deconstruct, how a universal basic income could really detangle some of the Gordian knot that we've got in the food system, from farming all the way through to disposal. But I'm also the co-chair of the UBI Lab Greater Manchester, which is where I work. I used to live there, I no longer live there now. I now live in a nice rural part of Wales. So I'm also now involved in the UBI Lab Cymru as well. So I'm trying to straddle all of these interesting areas, and it's the UBI Lab Food really that is at the minute is at the forefront of my work. And I'm interested in local food. So where I came from in terms of this is, so I just want to talk you through really kind of, I'm not going to take as much time as Rachel has. I've really just, because this is my current thinking. So this really is quite a theoretical talk, and I welcome comment and criticism. So I've always had an interest in food since I joined as a student, as an undergraduate student, a mature student, 25 years old, trying to feed my kids on a low income, trying to keep a roof over my head. I never knew it, but I was interested in poverty, and I never knew it because I was actually living in it. And when you're actually living in something, you don't find the academic interest, possibly until you come out of it and you think, wow, what have I just been through? So I have used food banks in the past. I'll come on to that in a minute, because that's where my academic interest went. But my first interest as an undergraduate student in the School of Geography at Bangor University was to look at the problems that Anglesey was experiencing in terms of its levels of food and food insecurity, which was happening. So I've got a really noisy dog underneath my feet. If you can hear that tapping, it's my dog. And I was interviewing people for my dissertation across Anglesey, looking at the reflection that they felt about local food and what does it mean to have local food on Anglesey. So for those of you who may know, Anglesey used to be called Mon Mam Cymru in Welsh. It means Anglesey, mother of all Wales. The soils on Anglesey are ridiculously fertile. It's relatively flat. So they used to grow a lot of food there. They used to produce a lot of flour there. And obviously it's Wales. There's always been a lot of sheep there, and it's an island. So there's a lot of fish. So they used to have lots of local food industries that serviced the island. And it was called Mon Mam Cymru, mother of Wales, because it could feed all of Wales from its produce, going back 200 years ago. And I was interested to understand this with people living on the island, to see how it is that they think and feel about local food. So that led to my undergraduate dissertation. I've got a website. I'll share it with you at the end if you're interested in reading my dissertation. My undergraduate one, if you want, it's on there. So I'm talking to people about their interest in food, and they say, yeah, I like local food. I like, the idea of local food is really important to me. Well, do you buy it? Oh, no, I don't buy it. It's way too expensive. And that got me thinking really about, the accessibility of local food to what is quite, in terms of the UK, is quite a poor area. So if you know North Wales, it's got some of the highest levels of multiple deprivation across all of Wales, especially along the North Wales coastline, places like Pryll and Prestatyn and Llandudno, some of the quite deep poverty in some of the areas due to the lack of industry, but also seasonal tourism. So I was interested in understanding people's perceptions. And I've developed along this line quite a distaste for supermarket shopping, because what I see for supermarket shopping is that it's depopulated the high street. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. And as Simon said, I'm a universal basic income advocate. This really came through in my academic work when COVID hit us and stopped us all from working. And I explained where I came to universal basic income in that previous talk, so I won't go back to that. But I am interested in basic income as a social policy academic. I see it as a way to reinvent the way that we understand and we think and feel about things such as social security, but also the meaning of work and the meaning of family and the meaning of belonging. So that's my interest in basic income as well. So I arrived at my interest in basic income through my interest of food insecurity. So my PhD, my master's thesis were all built around understanding the rise of food insecurity and the rise of food banks as an inadequate answer to food insecurity. And I've got plenty of talks and plenty of publications on the issues around the politicization of food banks, which I can share with you towards the end. But this is how I came to understand universal basic income. So a lot of my work now, what I do with students, kind of combines these areas of food, especially local food, but in food insecurity as well. And as an answer, I think and feel the area of basic income. So as a social policy academic, I do see that the social security system that we've got needs to change. I've got an article coming out in the next couple of months in a special edition for Bent Grieve, social policy academic, thinking about how to reframe the work of William Beveridge on the idea of the 5 giants that Beveridge came up with, and how a universal basic income could contribute to making them better. I will be sharing that when it's ready. Stop my dog banging. Sorry. Okay, I've lost my button. So, as I said at the beginning, this talk is going to be purely theoretical. I'm combining these areas, but it's a very new area that I'm now starting to look at. So I do appreciate lots of constructive discussion towards the end. So please feel free to give me some nice, decent questions. So this is a picture of what was my local supermarket. When I used to live in a very large town in Greater Manchester, Bolton, it's one of the biggest towns in the UK. Right next door to the large development, which is one of the largest out-of-town retail shopping centres, which is called Middlebrook. It's the home of the Bolton Wanderers football ground. And this is Tesco Extra. It's one of the biggest it is the biggest Tesco size store that they do, just off the M61 and then De Haarleveld Way. And, I grew up with this in my back garden, and I visited it a couple of months ago. And in there, there's Max Spielman, there's a hairdresser's, there's a barber's, there's a nail salon, there's a mobile phone shop. It's becoming, and supermarkets have become a one-stop shop for everything. And this really has kind of duped us as consumers into accepting this level of convenience, when I'm not actually sure yet that supermarkets really are convenient for everybody. It is built on this idea that people have to drive there and they have to shop and get everything there in 1 week. And that's really changed the way, as a social scientist, the way I think and feel that people interact with others within their community, because we've lost that sense of community. And a lot of that is built around the imposition of supermarkets as well. Now, supermarkets are built on this idea of convenience, okay, but we've got a lot, and it does do well at keeping the cost of food quite low, and that's great for people experiencing food insecurity. But that's because they externalize much of the cost. So the cost of cheap food is actually being picked up by farmers, by producers, by the people moving the goods, the children who are farming, cocoa beans in Ecuador. There's a lot of externalized costs to the environment that isn't actually reflected in the cost of our food. So the oil from shipping food around the world, monocropping, the way we've depopulated a lot of our fields of wildflower and the ecosystem damage for that. We've also got what I'm calling faux beauty, where supermarkets tell us what sort of shape we want our carrots and cucumbers and bananas and how big an apple should be. And they give us this faux beauty that the supermarkets selling us that the consumers really want. And we saw the work from people like Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall a few years ago with his, the idea of ugly food and wanting to open up food markets to other people. And we know that farmers, so I'm also involved in the UBI Lab for Farmers, sorry, UBI for Farmers. It's not part of the UBI Lab network. It's another organisation who are interested in looking at how the farming community could benefit from having a universal basic income. So these supermarkets are, when they were built, they were strategically planned to be out of town, and it was predicated on people having access to them through cars. So it fit very well with, the rise of mass oil and the rise of motor cars and shipping people into out of town shopping centres. And what that did, as many of us would know, it depleted our high streets. A lot of these retailers ended up relocating into these out of town places, and it kind of sucked the life out of a lot of our high streets. And I'm talking about the big towns, and I'm also talking about the little local high streets in the towns. And you see the loss of your butchers, your baker. And what they do here is, the idea is to sell products as cheaply as possible and stack them as high as possible and sell them cheap. And it brings in consumers. And we know, I'm going to looking at the cost of food across the retail sector here. So this is from Kantar World, looking at the share of the grocery market as it currently stands. We've always had, the big five: Tesco, Sainsbury's, Asda, and Morrison's, and they do take up a large proportion of the share of our grocery market. This is where people are actually buying the majority of their groceries from. So we look at the big five there, and in this, I've now started to include places like Aldi and Lidl, the German discounters that really took over and really took prominence during the fallout from the 2008-2009 Great Recession. We saw the rise of Aldi and Lidl really starting to take over the percentage of the grocery market share here. Now, the most recent data, you can see here on the screen, we see that Morrison's has now fallen behind Aldi, and Aldi has taken the place of being the fourth largest supermarket share in the UK, and Lidl's not very far behind that. So as you can see, these top five, the top six altogether now, they comprise of around about 80% of where people buy their groceries from. Whereas the independent sector is right down at the bottom there, and it's only 1.5%. And I think that, for me, is a massive concern in terms of our understanding of community and how we think and feel about each other. So this is the way that, it works. It's the idea that across the country, we've got these spokes of shops or supermarkets, however you want to think about them, all of these nicely distributed around the country, and they feed in to this hub. Now, this central hub is, this is where the boards sit. This is the head office. This is where all the finances is taken into. So when we see it like this, think about this as a map nicely distributed around the country, hubs, shops all around the country, feeding in the profit into the hub. When in reality, this is what it really looks like. So we've got this north-south divide, which is starting to develop. We've got these spokes spread out all around the country of your local Tesco and your local Morrison's, and they're actually feeding the majority of the profit down into this hub. And this hub, 9 times out of 10, is pretty much based in London. So the idea that all of our money that we're spending in these shops is being sucked down to London. The money that is left, and there is a percentage of the money that is left, and that's left up in the local areas around the spokes, in wages, so from the staff members who work in the shops. And that's the money really that's left there. And then they start to spend that money in the local community and other shops, and then that money then gets sucked down to London. So I've been reading a lot at the minute about transition towns, and I see, I've got Helena Norberg Hodge here, and I was reading some of the transition work by Rob Hopkins over the past couple of weeks. I've seen that Rob Hopkins had mentioned Helena in his work as well, which was fantastic to be in the same place as you as well. So I'm interested in transition towns. I'm interested in this idea of peak oil and how to move away from the dominant model of capitalism that we've got at the minute. So what we need to do that, and what I'm thinking at the minute we need to do that, is this idea of maintaining some form of resilience in our financial ecosystem or our green ecosystem, however we want to look at it as well. And we know that in order for an ecosystem to be flexible and be able to manage potential problems and to be resilient, it needs to have, diversity. It needs to be able to understand that different pockets operate at different areas and different things do different things. So we spread this diversity across. Now, we don't have very much diversity when 80% of the grocery market is being spent in the big six. So this diversity doesn't tend to exist. And we can see this in the depletion of our high streets. But also it needs to be modular as well. So this diversity, if there is an impact in one of these areas, such as a problem in butchery or something, there's always other areas that don't get as affected. If we think about this, how supermarkets become affected by horse meat scandal or something like that, it seems to have a massive knock-on effect to that business model. So the modular approach to having ecological resilience and a diversity approach involved in ecological resilience really helps to build up this level of ecological resistance. Now, our current food system is modular and it is diversified. However, that's only done on a global scale. So when we see that there's a problem in one area, the government, through food security approaches, goes out to another area to make sure that it can import that food. So we're not really achieving this modular and diverse approach that would really help with food resilience. So we do need to develop what I think is a more local approach or local resilience to be able to make sure that each individual on a neighborhood level will be able to support itself in case something happens. And a lot of this thinking comes from the work of, it's been done over, last century by Ebenezer Howard. The idea of the Garden City movement was to kind of like create these hubs and these spokes that worked in, local individual spaces. So the Transition Town Initiative, as I said, was built on the idea by Rob Hopkins, mainly down in Totnes, but a lot of it happened in the Southwest. And it was about addressing issues of peak oil and about addressing the combined issue of climate change as well. And the idea was that they were going to tackle both of these problems through grassroots movements. They wanted to develop local economies. And this is what really got me thinking now about a universal basic income and how that could be a key or one of the additional tools that we could have in terms of really helping to diversify our local economies. And it's through things such as convertible local currencies, such as what happened in Totnes. They piloted what was called the Totnes pound. And what it was a convertible local currency. You converted your pound sterling into a Totnes pound, and you could only spend that money in participating retailers. And these participating retailers were the local butchers, bakers, candlestick makers, those things that were real anchor institutions in the local high street. They accepted the local currencies. Tesco and Morrison's, they didn't accept them. And it was strategically built that way so that they wouldn't accept them. And what it did was it made people want to spend their money in the local communities. And we know that once you spend money in the local communities, that money stays within that local community because the baker and the butcher, they buy products from local producers and they buy products over to local retailers. And we create this local economy. And I think a basic income on one level could help do that if we could use part of our basic income also to go over to a local currency. I think it will help us reinvest in our declining high streets. So the most influential thing that I've looked recently, my research has taken me down looking at lots of convertible local currencies. And the best one that I found is called the Bristol pound. And I'm going to talk you through it quickly as a case study here just before I finish. Again, it was built on local producers, but local retailers, but not only local retailers, but also local producers were accepting it as well. So, for example, I could go and I could exchange a part of my income, maybe £100 every month. I could exchange a part of that income into a Bristol pound, and then I would go and spend that in Bristol. Are my slides still there? Have they disappeared?
They're still there, Dave, yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry, the other screen changed. So I could go and I could convert part of my income into a Bristol pound, for example, and I could go and spend it in my local butchers and the local bakers and the local fruit and veg shop. And then they would take my money and they would spend it with their supplies as well. So the farmers would accept it, and then it would come back into a whole circular economy because those farmers would then probably go and spend it as well in other local shops as well. So it creates this circular economy where this money doesn't leave this area. It's not being taken down to London. There's no board members involved in it. There's no financial incentive for large people to make lots of money and then probably go and offshore this money in the Cayman Islands and never actually pay tax on that money. So this money really stays quite locally. So from the research I found, there were 13 farms. So it's not just the retailers, not just the bakers and the candlestick makers. There were farmers involved in this as well. They were participating in this system. So, and also local renewable energy companies as well. So this money really was starting to stay as local as possible. And currently, to date, there's over 900 businesses involved in it. What's making the Bristol pound really interesting is that it's not just physical money. It's also done electronically. So you can pay on your phone, just like Google Pay. You can pay with it, you just transfer it over your phone to the producer or the retailer. So it's really, really helping to keep this Bristol pound alive. It has been facilitated through their credit union. So it's backed by some financial people. There's real financial incentive to be involved in this because the credit union's also there to be able to give businesses, local businesses and retailers, lots of financial support to make sure that they're happy with how the process and how the system's going. Now, it is dependent on people's abilities. And I do see this through quite a lens of class. So if you have got money to spend and convert into local currency, we can see that through quite a class dynamic. Has been quite a middle class thing to do. We do know that the supermarkets do sell things quite cheaply. So participating in this really is built on people's not just their desire, but their abilities to be able to want to develop or have the ability to develop their local currency as well. So we can see it through a class lens. That is quite worrying. But, and this is where I come on to my interest in basic income. So let's say if we have a basic income, you've got money that's never going to be taken away from you. It's unconditional. It is yours forever. Every month it's going to be there. If we can start to learn to convert part of our basic income into a local currency to reinvest in our high street, that surely is good for us all. And I'm just going to finish with this, just for those who may not be aware of basic income. I'm pretty sure everybody is. But a basic income is something that's universal. It's an unconditional payment that's made to everybody forever. You get it from the month you're born all the way through to the last month of your life. It's never going to be taken away from you. You don't have to jump through any bureaucratic hoops in order to receive it. It's completely unconditional and it's universal for everyone, exactly the same. But it is just enough for your basic needs. And in this, food must be seen as a basic human, it is a basic human right, but a basic need that people could spend this money on. And so I'm thinking a portion of your basic money every month, if you wanted to be transferred over to a local currency, would help us reinvest again in the high street. And I'll probably finish there because I want lots of comments about this because it's just where my thinking is going at the past couple of weeks. Just give you a couple of links on there so you can find me on my usual staff profile on the University of Salford. I've started to produce lots of YouTube videos at the minute about my thinking, so you can find me there called That Sociologist, and there's a QR code that takes you to my link tree. But I've mentioned my website. I publish all my research on the website because I don't like big publishing houses and things being locked away behind paywalls. So if I write it, I publish it as well on my website. And you'll find me on LinkedIn. Thank you very much.